Let's see it again. Let's see it again.
Dude, I
I
got my
like
I
it.
got my I got my Tito Ortiz shirt on today.
Uh-oh.
Nice.
You got Tito
All for
Ortiz.
Tito Ortiz, baby. Let's
So
go.
we've had some famous motocross, some rockers, a comedian, and
Yeah.
Kaleigh still has, even though all that star power, Kaleigh still has the most watched, most downloaded Third Chance episode ever. So we had to have
Let's
her
go.
back.
By a
Uh,
lot too. By like not by like we literally just had Colin Scummy from the dude was Metal Militia guy.
yeah.
Your episode got more
You
views.
got more
my
views than the
people are
Metal
great.
Militia, which is
Yeah.
spectacular. It must be those bright,
Hey, shout out
sparkling.
to Metal Militia though.
Yeah, it must be those bright, sparkling eyes. Everyone wanted to tune in. So, uh,
Maybe.
this is Third Chance. We are episode 40. Big unit, Randy Johnson, number 40.
Let's go.
What's your favorite big unit memory?
I mean, there's the best one is when you're watching him pitch the ball and it like the seagull goes by and it just boom.
He
No
exploded the
seagulls.
he exploded
Yeah,
the bird.
exploded the bird.
Sorry,
Exploded the
Peter.
bird.
Cool. Well, we are number 40. I can't believe we've been doing this for 40 weeks.
I know,
It
insane
feels like 40 years. We're
for
like an
sure.
old
Yeah.
couple, like an old married couple now, Drago.
Oh, how did
We're
that
aging like
honeymoon phase?
Yeah.
we're aging like a
If
fine wine, bro.
if we were a couple, who would be the big spoon and who would be the little spoon?
I would be the big spoon for
You would
sure.
be the big spoon.
I would be the big spoon,
You're a
yeah.
little bit bigger, but I'm a little bit tougher,
No.
so I
Hey,
might fight you off. Oh, I kid, I kid. Well, let's get into it today. And those of you watching for your first time, please share. You can download on all the streams. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. What other ones are there?
we're literally on every streaming platform.
Every streaming platform. You can watch us on YouTube. We'll record this, put on YouTube. Please share. I just want to start off with a success. I had a college buddy that's really struggling. He watched one of the episodes and we're communicating back and forth. He was already in recovery or in treatment, excuse me, and going to meetings. But it just helps to have somebody that he knew who has struggled. He's having some business problems. He's having some alcohol problems, drug problems from the past. Somebody I used to be good friends with, right? I shouldn't say used to be. We're still friends. We just kind of lost touch. And man, it's just cool to see that his vulnerability, his willingness to share, his willingness to reach out and say, "Hey, I'm struggling. Can you pray for me?" He just
Yeah.
wanted prayers.
Like,
So I
how does that
think
make you feel though? Like what does that do inside? Does that make you feel like empowered that we're empowering people to better their life?
I think honesty and vulnerability is so important, Drago. I see so many people, and I think it's the demise of the next generation, right?
Yeah.
I believe that comparison is the thief of joy. I can't think
Yeah.
of anything worse than comparing yourselves with other people. And I think we are in this digital age where comparison is so natural. I mean, me and you
Yes.
get caught up into it in our industries, right? I
Yeah.
constantly have to tell myself, like, you're competing with yourself. You just get better than yourself. Be better today than you were yesterday. You don't need to
That's the
compare
only goal.
yourself. You don't need to compare yourself with anybody. You are you. You are competing against you. You're trying to be a better version of yourself than yesterday, and that's it, right? So I think it is beautiful when people can get honest, can be vulnerable,
Let's
can swallow their pride, right? I'm reading the Bible chronologically now, right? And it's like all of these doom and gloom things. And guess what? Every story leads back to two things:
you tell me.
pride and ego. Every
Pride and
Right.
ego.
downfall, it's like all these great kings, and it's all pride and ego, pride and
Yeah.
ego.
Yeah.
So
That's crazy. So just I'm not reading the Bible, but I've got our past guest Brock Bevel. He's graciously taking me back through the steps the way that he does it, and we're reading Extreme Ownership, and we're going chapter by chapter, and that's the same point of that book is just like the Bible. Pride and ego.
pride and ego. Everything comes down to pride and ego.
Accountability.
Yep.
Accountability goes so far.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So we had a nice exchange, and I said, "Hey, You can complain about circumstances and blame others, and it will make you feel good. But just like the drugs, it is short-lived and
Yeah.
it leads to withdrawal and
Temporary
addictions
fix.
of not taking accountability. Or you can just blame yourself in everything that you do and know everything in your life that's good is because of you and everything bad in your life is because of you. And that's not always true. But when
Right.
you take control and just have that outlook on life, then you just focus on what you can control and not all the outside stigmas and
Yeah.
stimulus, excuse me, and judgment. And, it's just a beautiful way to take control of your
Well,
life.
bro, that's awesome. That makes me feel good. That we're getting these type of people that like are comfortable enough to come to us
Mhm.
and have those conversations because that's exactly why we're doing this.
That's right.
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah, and to have a
I
friend that came back and did it is just, it's why
Yeah,
we do this.
that's
So
super awesome, bro.
let's get into it with Kaleigh. I'm gonna let you two roll a little bit, and then I'll chime in with some questions. And today we wanted to talk about how childhood trauma, which Kaleigh definitely had plenty of, can affect your life. And I think she's done a beautiful job of going through it, having some struggles, and then coming out the other side with some great tools to cope with life and to just live what we just said, right?
honest.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that have happened in her life that was out of her control, but once she took control of her life and realized that she could make it better, she's now got this beautiful life and a platform
Yeah.
with us. So I'll let you two get into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
I appreciate. So Kaylee, after we did our last podcast, she came to me and she's like, "Hey, I want to come back on. Like, I'd love to like kind of break down some childhood trauma." I said, "Well, that's a great idea because we've never even like talked about that part of whatever that is, in recovery." And so like I got to thinking too, like myself, like, I think a lot of like my childhood trauma was like I have no control over. But then at the same time, like when you think about like the way that you are now and who you are as a person, a lot of that trauma comes up because you just assume that's how things were supposed to be. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I can only speak for myself. So Kaylee, do you want to get into like specifics or like particular, like something that changed your life in regards to childhood trauma?
Um, I don't think I could ever really put it down to anything besides the biggest few things, but still there's still a few really large things that happen. In
Yeah.
general, I just want to kind of touch on the fact that any kind of a any kind of problem most likely in like adult lives and stuff, if you don't know where it's coming from, it's more likely that you have unresolved trauma that more than likely can't will does lead all the way back to like childhood. And I think mainly what I want kind of to not focus on, we can focus on different things, but I just want people to know that it is possible to build healthy relationships as an adult with people in general, society, anyway, shape or form, after having that like neglect. So there's a big difference in my brain with like neglect and abuse. Um, and I think a lot of people that kind of like that are on my end that have more of the like neglect side
Mhm.
we often um kind of like push ourselves down stating that like somebody always had it worse, and that's like not a healthy mindset. Like neglect and abuse are like right on the same. I always like to say you don't compare traumas. If you drowned in a teaspoon of water, you're just as dead as if you drowned in the ocean, and it's the same as you can't say that your childhood trauma was worse than anybody else's because you had X, Y, and Z, because it really just affects us all the same. We
Yeah.
just don't
And
realize
I
it.
agree 100%. Like my childhood trauma is different from Chad's childhood trauma. I think we all
Yep.
have trauma. The way that the childhood trauma affects you when you go into like your adult life. So like for me, like a lot of like just how my family was set up and like what I saw and like I not necessarily neglect, but there was just a lot of this all the time,
Yep.
right? And so now coming into my adult life, the reason I wanted to go back through the steps and rework out, like I still have a lot of self-limiting beliefs that I'm working through. And then at the same time, like sometimes I catch myself acting how my parents would act. And I'm like, where does that come from? Like, why am I doing that? Right. You know what
Like,
I'm
this
saying?
isn't me.
Correct. Correct. Did you
It
like
changes your DNA.
for sure?
Like any kind of trauma goes cellular. It changes your actual DNA. And you know, there's a lot of people that don't understand and they don't know. And that's why I love being so open and recover so loudly, is because there's so much stigma over like abuse and stuff like that. And of course, like us growing up, like all of us in the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was a totally different time than it is now. But also, we have more research to see how that way of life was not effective. And we're able to break those generational curses. And that's pretty much like my main thing. It's like, just because I had a horrible childhood, like it is so easy for that to filter on into like being a parent.
Yeah.
And my only goal was to be the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So for those that didn't watch the last episode, what was some of the trauma? What was the neglect? How did it impact you? Um, what help did you get to overcome it, and how has it helped you in your adult life?
Absolutely. So just kind of in a small little nutshell, my mother was very unstable mentally my whole life. My father left when I was 5, and between the age when I was 5 until I was 30 when my mother died, she had 5 different husbands and went through a lot of different things on her end, very unstable mentally. So I grew up seeing very unstable relationships, very I still am. I'm autistic, so I have a lot of neurodivergence as far as like emotional wise. So like as a child, I had a lot of high needs that like were not seen. Like back then it was like you children are seen, not heard.
Yeah.
And you know,
So
so
that's the neglect part. You
the
had,
neglect
yeah,
is where, you know, the home was that I grew up in was very dirty, very disgusting. My mother never cleaned, you know, because of her mental health disorders.
yeah,
But there wasn't the help that there is now.
right,
So the crazy thing is like through my recovery of like healing myself, even though my mom is gone, I have been able to see through her eyes to where like being the age I am now and being
yeah,
able to see like the mental health disorders. So like the neglect side, when I needed it most, that's the biggest thing is like I wasn't taught the things like a regular child, you know, hygiene and how to clean
yeah,
and, you know, do laundry and do dishes and just normal
right. Normal, how to
everyday
take care
human
of yourself
things.
type
Yeah,
of
how to
thing.
take care
Yeah,
of yourself. I was never, because my mother never was able to take care of
yeah.
herself. There was always somebody taking care of her. If it wasn't me and my sister, it was whoever she was with. And so,
When did the autism diagnosis happen?
um, we're 25 now. I bet it was about 3 years ago
Three
is
years ago?
was my actual, yeah.
That's
So
fascinating because one of our guests we just had on
changed
just found
everything
that out about
about,
himself, right?
hmm
Yeah.
And he's in
Yeah.
he's in his 40s, and
yep.
he's always like, I always knew that I was unique and special.
Well, and it's
Um,
crazy going back to earliest memories in elementary school and
yeah,
the things that I would get in trouble for, like knowing the answer and yelling it out instead of like raising my hand, you know. It's
yeah,
crazy, like those kind of things. But even I was about a year and a half into my recovery and sober before I even had that diagnosis.
yeah,
So even like the difference in knowing that was a way to like also understand that my mom just didn't know
right,
how. Like she didn't know how to like show me what I needed because I was higher needs and she was higher needs as an adult. Um, so in general, my mother had I had very unstable relationships with my mother.
Yeah.
I was 14 when I had my first suicide attempt. Um, and my mother's reaction to finding me was not what a normal mother's reaction was. So that was a huge traumatic event for me. Um, so her reaction to that was pretty intense. But never got me help, never sent me anywhere. Um,
This was at 14, you said.
this was at 14. So I had already been, if I take it back a little bit, at 13 was the first time that I um, was taken by the cops to rehab because they caught me drinking underage out in public.
Yeah.
So there was underage drinking, there was self-harm, there was suicide attempts, and my mother never told a single soul. Didn't tell my grandmother, didn't tell my father, didn't try to get me help, nothing like
Yeah.
that.
Like wiped it under the rug, right? Just
It
kind
just never happened.
Yeah.
Yep.
of.
And
So
it
that's the
was,
generation that wipes everything
yep.
under the rug, right?
And
Yeah.
so that was, pretty big. I was 15. My parents had a car accident. I was the person that found them. Um, that was my dad and my stepmom that I had moved in with. So that was obviously that ruined that. I always say that ruined my life, but that was the biggest thing that changed my life.
Change your life, yeah.
But
They both passed, Kaleigh,
I,
and
they
the
did
accident.
not. No,
Oh,
they both lived. My father's alive. They're no longer together.
got it.
My stepmother was called in, and like when they got there I was the reason she started breathing again.
Mm.
I was scooping blood and glass out of her mouth, so it
Oh,
was pretty
wow.
crazy.
Bad accident.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
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 That was their drinking and driving accident. So
Mm.
I was the one that found them. My friend and I were on our way home and happened to pass them. So, but after that, so that happened. So that was a major, major, major. My mom, my stepmom was in the ICU for 8 days. I mean, they didn't know if she was even going to make it at first. There was so
Yep.
much damage. So after that, my anxieties that were already at like a 8 my entire life were at like a 90.
Yeah.
Um, I timed how far away from the house their jobs were to see how long their drives were home. They couldn't stop anywhere without telling me first. Um, I would have suffocating panic attacks if I heard like a siren or a helicopter or
Mm.
anything like that.
Yeah.
And I begged them. I told them that there was something wrong. Like I needed help. I begged them to go see somebody. Like I
Yeah.
begged to go to a therapist or to somebody because I had had that previous help when I had been in rehab, but I wasn't drinking or anything now. So they didn't see a reason. They're like, oh, you're fine. So I got told, it's still now, I get told all you need to focus on is the fact that you saved her life, she lived, and she's here. Okay, I totally well and get that. But when a 15-year-old sees her parents and looks at them and literally thinks
Right.
they're dead,
So you had this
that's
like vicious circle
the
of
PTSD from that was so bad. And I
you had the
begged
trauma
them.
from the accident, right?
Mhm.
You didn't know, but you were on the spectrum, right?
Yep.
Which needs and
And
deserves
already had an
special
alcohol
care and
problem.
special tools, right?
Yep.
To assist with that. I have a couple friends that are on the spectrum,
Yeah.
and it's just a different
It's
level.
it's an emotional, you can't communicate your
Yeah.
emotions. So,
And then you were self-medicating to try and
mhm.
fix this all with alcohol.
Yep. And
And what else
self-harm.
on top of that?
Self-harm on top of that because
Uh,
nobody would get me
I don't know
help.
what that is, so explain what that
So
is.
I was cutting. So I had a cutting problem.
Mhm.
I started when I was about 10.
Yeah,
My emotions were so big that I couldn't handle how big they were inside my head.
yeah.
So when I would cut, it would transfer that to physical pain and something I could control.
Makes
I
sense
could
of in control.
Oh
control
wow.
the
Yeah,
physical pain.
yeah.
So, I knew when the physical
That's the
pain was going
best
to.
description I've ever heard
Yeah,
of.
wow. I've never heard that before either. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have to thank my therapy team for that because most people don't like viewers, but I have I'm covered in tattoos. And so from my neck down, and at 18, I started getting tattoos as soon as I turned 18. And my therapy team and I have come to the conclusion together that when that started is when I actually shifted my own self-harm into something that I could control, which was my
Yeah.
tattoos.
Yeah.
So if ever I had those moments of I can't control what's going on, I can go get a tattoo. And it's something that I love and that I cherish. And but that is a way of shifting that emotional pain into something you can control. Because you
Mm.
can give yourself therapy and therapy and therapy, and you can tell yourself all day long that you're going to be okay and that you're safe. But it doesn't, when it's just so big, when you have the emotional disorders, um, from Trump, PTSD, I have borderline personality disorder, which is a whole nother subject with the
Yeah.
emotions because of the trauma and neglect. And then so it shifts it. It gives you your own power over that pain. And instead of it being given by somebody else, it's in your hands. And
So let me ask you
so
a question.
absolutely.
You are, how long is this going on in your teenage years? Like, are you're,
So I started when I was 10. I started with cutting when I was 10.
yeah.
Um, And that came after a school district change. So halfway through fifth grade.
Mhm.
So I'd been in the same school since kindergarten or since first grade. So first through fifth grade, halfway through fifth grade, my mom went through another divorce and I was forced to change school districts.
Mm.
And I don't remember how I came about it the first time. I just remember it took over very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Um, because there were so many things that I couldn't communicate to my parents or anybody around me emotionally. So that was just how, and I don't even know at the time if anything would have changed
So
either.
And how much?
knowing what you know now,
Mhm.
what tools could have been provided to you at that time that you believe? So if our listeners, we have parents
Yeah.
listening and they're starting to notice some signs in their child,
So I have a
they're
16
starting to
year
see
old.
some
So
struggles, right? You have a 16
so
year old.
my son is 16
Yeah.
years old.
So
Um,
let's not talk about him, but I want you to talk about him. Let's talk about what would have helped Kaleigh at that time, looking back.
yeah. Oh, literally just my mom or dad just
Mm.
acknowledging my existence. I mean, like, oh man, I just wanted to be loved. Like I wanted to not feel I felt so alone. I have an older sister and like we did not get along. So like we had no relationship. We literally stayed in separate sides of the house because we couldn't stand each other. Um
And you're
so it
both
was like
probably fighting for attention and
we
love that
were
was never going to come.
we were and my mom had my sister at 16. So they had 5 years together at a totally different area in life.
Right.
But that's all
Right.
I wanted. I wanted to see my sister had this mom relationship with my mom, but I didn't. I didn't get that mom. She got a totally different mom than I got. And
Mm.
so it's that part's kind of crazy too,
You
because
think
like growing
therapy
up,
would have
like,
helped?
well, I was in therapy and it was helping. Like it was the one time that I knew somebody cared
And
was
how
my
did you get to the
therapy team.
therapy? Like if you're like, so you weren't getting what you needed from your parents, like did you go put yourself in therapy? How did you get into therapy?
I got put into therapy when I got brought home by the police.
By the
Got it.
state.
So it was
Yeah.
forced. Okay.
So I was forced into it. The first two times I was forced into it. But I begged to go. I asked to go back. I wanted to go back. It was the only time that I thought that anybody was paying attention to me. Like I couldn't get anybody to in a positive way.
Mm.
In a positive way, let me say that. I could not get my parents to pay attention to me in a positive way whatsoever. There was there was no positivity. It wasn't like And I wasn't looking for like a good job. It was like, hey, I love you. It was simply the bare minimum is what I needed, and I was not getting that. So in order to like, I think it took my youth leader, because I was in youth group at the time, and I'm pretty sure the first time that my mom was confronted with my cutting was my youth leader actually saying something to her in person, um, about it and that it was getting pretty bad. And
Shrugged it off.
she was like, okay,
Yeah.
like, we'll take care of it, or, whatever. But again, I had a mother who was a hypochondriac and also had her own mental health disorders. So like if she was not in the spotlight, nothing else, like
And
nobody was there. Like she was,
what was her childhood like?
so she had a really good childhood. My mother was adopted though. So like so that's where we get into generational trauma. Generational childhood trauma is my biological grandmother was 16 when her parents found out she was pregnant, and she was sent away to a home in Cincinnati. We live in Dayton. She was sent away to a home in Cincinnati, like away from everybody, had the baby, and she immediately had to give her up for adoption.
Mm.
Um, so genetically, while my grandmother was pregnant with my mother, the trauma that she went through was genetically passed to my mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the crazy thing about that is a female is born with every egg they'll ever have in their entire life as a infant, like as a new, like as from birth.
Mhm.
And so genetically, my grandmother's trauma passes as far down as me, because while she had my mother in utero, her DNA was changing my mother's DNA, which was in turn changing half of my DNA that my mother was carrying.
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
So on top of the things that I physically like actually went through in life, I had 3 generations of trauma genetically that my body knew. So there's a really good book that I read when I first started on my childhood trauma, called What My Bones Know. And it's about, so your brain, I don't remember, I remember blips of things, as far as like being a kid and like the things that happen. Um,
So like
because
you couldn't just recall your childhood, right? Like you just only remember like specific like
No, I have like 2 dozen memories until I'm
oh,
15. Like
oh,
I can't, that's it. Like I've gone through it with like my psych team, and it's my brain, when you go through trauma, your brain literally makes new neurological pathways so that you never
You
think
block it
about
out.
that. So you never think about that again. So it's kind of like the way your lungs and stuff work inside your body. You don't feel it, you're not aware of it, but technically it's just locked away in a part of your brain that is not a conscious part.
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's how childhood
Your
trauma
brain's
works.
smart enough to shut it
Oh,
off and say
it's so crazy.
that memory is too painful and this is not well for our survival, so we're going to
Yeah.
completely block it off. Right? There's
So
been
just the acknowledgement.
Yeah. So how has what have you learned? What did you change? How have you dealt with this? And how has it made you a better parent to your 16-year-old? And what advice
Absolutely.
would you give our
Good
listeners that
question.
are parents?
Yes. So this is absolutely to all the parents out there. My biggest advice for it is when you are explaining to your child why they can't do something or why they can't go somewhere, it's emotionally, they don't understand why you're trying to keep them from it. So say your 16-year-old comes to you and he's like, hey, Johnny's having a party after homecoming. There are safe ways to go about that. There are safe ways as a parent to go about that. Um, you can absolutely be a safe place for your child. And in that, it is just you have to take your emotions out of it and remember that they are growing up. Like they are going to need whatever you're telling them now, they're going to remember it 20, 30, 40 years later. If you notice anything, just pay attention to your kids. If talk to them. If you sit down with your kids and they're like, and you're like, hey, how'd your day go? They're gonna be like, ah, it's just school, whatever. But actually, like, know where they're at with their friend group, know what's going on. Just be present. Being present in your child's life is the biggest thing you can do.
Yeah.
Teaching them that it's okay to have emotions, that's okay to be human. My biggest thing was I was put into a group for I was put into it because of my borderline personality disorder. However, there's a thing called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is called CBT, and then there's DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. And in order to reroute those horrible childhood memories, when they do come up, your brain makes new neurological pathways. So you can actually have 100% control over your thoughts that come into your brain and the way that you speak. The cognitive behavioral therapy helps you realize that thoughts are just thoughts. They can
Go.
be pink elephants coming into your room at night, but they're just thoughts, and you can actually you can actually control them. You are in control of your thoughts and emotions. I know that they feel big and they feel out of control, but it is possible
Yeah.
to help your brain in those moments be able to get and talk to your kids.
Yeah,
Uh
for me and my
learn things.
family, what we
Yep.
do is I mean we eat dinner at the dinner table. So sometimes, coming home late from work, that's like the most precious time that I have, and I still have to check myself because, maybe like I'm not in the best mood. I just, had a long work day, but I feel like eating at the dinner table and having
Being present.
yeah, that's that's
That's
that's
it.
where you're getting the because
That's
you're
it.
by time you put into bed, you're like, oh, how was your day? It was great. Well, like tell me
Yep.
more. How are you feeling? Like, so that works for us in my family.
We
It
use
takes,
this.
yay.
You ever see these cards?
Talking point. No.
Oh, wow.
Unbelievable. If you got a long road trip at dinner, just ask your kids super cool questions that gets them to open up. It's a fun
That's really
game.
cool.
Yeah.
And
So
you guys do this at the dinner table?
yeah, not every night. I'm not perfect with it, but I'm like you, Drago. I probably get home for dinner 3 nights a week. I don't get all five. Our industry's crazy right now and tough. So
Yeah.
there are times I got to work longer than that, but
Being present, literally take five, ten
there you
minutes
go.
and
There you go.
just, that's it. Like just be present in your kids' lives and it will change. You will see a
Yeah.
change.
And guess
Yeah.
what? Present isn't you allow them to have their devices at the dinner table and you have yours. Present
No,
isn't you're thinking about work or something else that you have to do in the
be
future,
mindful.
right? Present is you are present in the moment. So I struggle with turning it off, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
me too.
Work really hard. I have
Everybody does.
four
That's just how our lives are.
four businesses that I run. That's not saying I got more than any of you or anybody listening. That's just my reality, right? It's hard for me to shut it off sometimes. But what I've learned, let me give you a little tactic, is if you want to be present, whatever you're doing, brain dump what you're thinking onto a piece of paper. I have a to-do list and a journal right by my desk. I will not leave until I've done it. That then flushes my brain, work brain, onto a piece of paper. I know it's going to be there the next day. I then come home and I leave my cell phone in my car, in my garage. I can't even turn it off and have it by me because if I have this by me,
Yep.
right, I will be distracted of what's going on. I wonder what the stock market did. I wonder if the Bears got Ben Johnson over the stinking Raiders. I wonder,
Go Pack.
and I get to poke some fun at Drago because we got the coach he wanted, right? I was seriously sitting thinking about that one night while I was at
Right.
dinner with my kids. That's crazy, right? It's because my phone was right there,
Yeah.
right? So you can. I truly believe for those of you, I know some of you have to work 2 jobs. I know some of you have to work
I was
overtime.
that I was that single mom working 2 jobs
Yeah.
before my recovery, and I still, it was just those few minutes of, I don't know, just sitting together, talking, not even telling jokes. I mean, it's just little moments, and that is what they will remember.
It is quality and presence, mindfulness and presence with your children, not quantity of time. I know a
Oh,
lot of people that
absolutely.
sit and spend all this time with their kids, but they're not spending time with them because they're
Your
not.
kids will never remember what you got them. It's not about the things. It is literally about the time and effort you put into just
There,
being there and being present.
there are days that all I get is to take my girls to school and to come lay with them in bed and pray with them, and that's all I see them. But
Yep.
guess that 45
Those moments.
minutes to an hour and a half is more impactful than if I spent 3 hours sitting next to them,
Yep.
watching TV or doing their homework. Right.
Absolutely.
And my
Absolutely.
wife saves all the math homework for me because she doesn't know
Oh, I
No,
feel that.
yeah, bro.
how.
Not in my house, dude. Samantha gets that homework, dude. Like, what is this?
So
Like, I don't know what this is.
it's presence of time. You heard Kaylee say it.
It
The
is. It
one
is.
thing that
Just
would
be
would have,
present.
yeah, the one thing that could have fixed her trauma, what
20 years
what she
of
was crying
self.
out for as a child was, I just want to be loved and I just want you to be attentive. And it is all of these terrible things that can happen to a child if you're not that, especially if there's trauma. And you would like to think that you, as a parent, know all your kids' trauma. I
You
promise there's
won't.
something that happened in their life that you know nothing about, right?
Yep.
There,
Absolutely.
there was some, I would call it close to sexual abuse that happened to me by a babysitter that was a neighbor, that was family friends. It didn't, it didn't, I didn't even know about it until I went to therapy and it came out, right?
Yeah. It's wild.
It
Your
And
is
brain
wild.
does some
then
crazy stuff.
and then it's like, well, no wonder he got in all these fights. No wonder he had all these anger issues. No wonder
He
anytime
was uncomfortable in
a
these
guy
situations.
that I didn't know tried to get close to me would get punched in the face. It's because I
Yep.
had this trauma that wasn't uncovered, that I never had the tools to deal with.
Just
And
talk to your kids.
my parents provided for me and protected me, but there wasn't an openness to share that with, and it probably would have
You
came
have to,
out then.
that
But
safe space. Be present and be safe.
I
Know
didn't have a
that
safe space.
it's not about you.
Yeah.
Be present and be their safe space.
So how do you do
They,
that with your son? How do you make that place safe for
um,
him?
I would say the biggest part of it is that we listen, we don't judge.
Say
We
it again.
we listen, we do not judge.
Yep.
So it's kind of goes along with my, are we solving things or are we just listening? So they kind like when we talk, I'll ask him, is he just venting? So is he just wanting to talk, get all this off his chest because he can't say it to anybody else?
Everybody write that down or put notes in your phone. Do you want me to listen or do you want me to
Me too.
fix it?
Yes,
Yeah.
Right?
That sentence will change everything for you.
Change
it
my
does.
marriage,
It
change
does.
my relationship with my kids. Do you want, guess what guess both my wife and my girls, I have 3 girls, guess what they say most of the time?
That's my
Just want you to listen. Now,
Yeah.
guess what I used to do?
Give them advice.
Oh, you got to do this, and I'm gonna,
yeah.
I'll go break that little boy's arm, and hey, I'm gonna go punch their dad in the face or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
no, for sure. And
I'm
they
embellishing.
just want to scream it out loud, and then um they will never know, like they will never know that you'll never know that, that just them saying it and getting it off their chest, they don't, a lot of the times they don't want you to be like, okay, well, maybe that's not the best friendship for you or this
Mhm.
person or that person. Sometimes they just want to talk to you about
Yeah,
it, and know that they can just talk to you about it,
yeah.
and then it's not going to change. Like, yeah, get it off their chest, and then that's that.
And that's
Yeah.
how
And
I've
so
been ending those conversations. Like, what are you gonna do about it?
yeah.
And
Let
I
let
just let
let
them
them
talk.
figure it out.
Yeah, you
And
figure it
most of the
out.
time, will come up with their own.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, if you just listen, they're able to come up with their own
Yeah.
solutions as well, and that gives them independence, and that is
Yeah.
something that means so much to a
Yeah.
child. As much as you don't want to do it, you in order to be a good parent, you have to listen to your kids.
Yeah, I'll
I
let you
It
get to
also,
some final
think.
thoughts here in a second. I just want to say one more thing, and we got to wrap this up. So
Sure.
here's the truth, right? Generational curses, and Kayleigh's right. I want to share something. We got my wife and I got pregnant. She wasn't supposed to be able to have kids. The twins are IVF, right? We struggled for like 5 years to have kids, and my wife was like, "Oh my God, I'm pregnant again. What'd you do to me?" She said to me, she right when she had the positive test, she said, "I'm gonna chop your dick off," is what she said to
Mhm.
me. She was not happy that she was pregnant again. It was a big surprise, right? We love Parker. She completes our
Of
family.
course.
She's the greatest child, not the greatest of them three, but we couldn't imagine our lives without him, right? But during the time she was pregnant, we would joke like, she's like, "God, I gotta get fat again, and I gotta do this, and oh my God, I can't believe." And it was a joke, tongue in cheek, that we said back and forth, right? But we go to this holistic doctor that we loved, and he does energy readings, right? There's no way for this dude to ever know this. Guess what? One of the first things he said,
your energy is
She can
off.
feel
her
everything.
energy's off because she feels abandoned, because there was something that happened while she was pregnant that made her feel unwanted. We're like, "Oh, shoot." Right.
Yeah,
So now, when we've
it's
fixed it, my wife has
crazy.
done an amazing job. And it was just a joke, right? It was not
Yeah,
serious. We were, of course, very happy because we weren't supposed to be able to have babies naturally. And then it happened, right? So this is how generational curses happen.
it does.
Haley's so
Generational
right
trauma.
that it is past energy to your child. So Drago and I have preached that we are super transparent with our children about our addictions, what's in your
Absolutely.
DNA, what's been passed to us, what we've passed to you. Here's what we've struggled with. Transparency, honesty, vulnerability,
I have
I
never,
believe,
yep,
is so
I've
important
never
with your
hidden
kids.
anything either.
Cool.
They know everything. And that's what I was actually just talking to them about it the other day. Like, I'm like, what do we talk about in our house? And they're just like, your emotions. Like, we just talk, like, it just make them feel safe. You just have to be your kid's safe space
Mhm.
Yeah,
always, when they're
there we
little
go.
and when they're grown.
That's
That's the way to
beautiful.
end it right there.
Yep.
The home. My wife always says the home will always be their safe space to come back to,
Yes.
no matter what.
Yep.
No
Got
matter
to
how
make
old
it
they
that.
are.
Yeah,
Cool. Final
yeah.
thoughts, Kayleigh, and then take us out, Drago.
I recommend, just if you think that you have any kind of trauma, just it's really worth trying to heal it. From small things to large things, because in between you'll never know what you're going to heal, and it's much better on this side. We
Yeah.
can recover. We do recover, and we can live better, happier, healthy lives emotionally after crazy stuff happens to us and trauma. But we
Yeah.
can do it. We do recover.
And
It's
it's so
And I'm
true what
always there for you. Anybody needs to talk. My stuff's always open.
you know. Yeah, I
awesome.
mean it's so true. Like it just once you get the tools, you find someone, a sponsor that can get you through, a therapist that can help you with your trauma, and once you have the tools and you know how to overcome it, life is so beautiful once you have developed that strength, and then it just makes you want to do what we do is go out and help people that are going through it because we remember being in those holes and we just want to extend a hand down. So
Yeah.
take,
Just want to know that we can get better.
take us
Got
out
to
on
got to
that,
get the
Drago.
got to get the tools in the toolbox. So listen, everybody, thank you for taking the time to watch our episode. We say this every episode. We don't do this because we're trying to get famous on social media. We do this because this fills up our cup. So we always put our personal mobiles in the chat. We are always available. I would much rather take a call from you at 3 o'clock in the morning than have to go to your funeral because you made one stupid decision and you left this universe. You know what I'm saying? We're here to help. We have the resources in place. If you're thinking about getting sober, if you're thinking about anything, we got you. Reach out. We're
Yes.
always available. We love you and thank you for taking the time to watch this.
Yes.
Kayleigh,
Thank
you
you.
rock.
Yeah,
Love
Kaleigh.
you guys. Yay.
Please
Here's
share,
what's important.
download, give Kaleigh's second episode more than her first. She's still
Let's
the
go.
#1 downloaded episode.
We got this.